Well, I think women in Egypt have achieved a lot. I think um, it is to be recognized that women have given the country a lot, achieved a lot, and are supposed to now reap the gains of their achievements. Problems, problems is the problems of competition. Often you have this problem of competition between women and women, not men and women. Hmm? If you speak about pay, both suffer from bad pay. It's not the woman who suffers only. Hmm? The man suffers and the woman suffers. Maybe if we go to the problems of the country, but again both suffer. Transportation. For a woman to go without a car from her home to her work, this is an ordeal. Hmm? To go back is an ordeal. To stay in traffic 2 hours is an ordeal. This applies to all Egyptians, so we can't single out women. Hmm? When we come to say about commodity prices, yes, of course, it bears on women because she is the person who manages the house. Health, yes, also. But this applies to both. No Egyptian has proper health care. Clothing, the same. Housing, the same. So the problems of Egypt apply to the same. But if we come back to the point of personal status law, of course women would suffer more than men because men have the power of divorcing, have the power of throwing a woman out of her house, have the power of not giving her a monthly pay if she is divorced. Of course, law does not allow all this, but in practice it happens. So these are the problems. But I think it's a little bit eroding those problems because women have become more savvy about the law. There are NGOs that are helping women to eradicate their ignorance and illiteracy in law, and also helping them to deal with their cases. So I think there is a change in the country. Well, I think we had a golden opportunity during the drafting of the Constitution, and this golden opportunity was missed because it was more opportune to have a quota for women in the next House of Representatives. And I would call for a 25% quota. I know it's not going to happen because the draft constitution will be voted on the 14th and 15th of January, and frankly I will say yes for the constitution because I want the country to move forward. The points that I have problems with I think could be amended in the coming years, like the quota, and we will test the next elections. We will see how many women were successful to have a seat in the next House of Representatives. If it's only 10, then this is a catastrophe, okay? First of all, it will give a very bad image of Egypt, and it will consolidate the critics of the country, that this country is one of the worst in parliamentary representation. Now, if we get 100, which is far-fetched, then fine. 100 will be something like 25% of the parliament. Then we're on the right track. But I don't think that we will reach 100, and I don't know if we will reach 10. So therefore, I think women, after the House of Representatives is elected, must work on modifying the quota or inserting a quota, so that during the next elections there would be a quota for women. But it all remains to be seen with the results of the next election. That's about women's participation. And I think a lot of women have been involved in community work and have given a lot of their time to help people. And these women should run for parliament. Because I tell you the difference between before 25 of January and 30th of June revolutions and after. Before the two revolutions, the main factor was political power and money. If you had political power and you're supported by a lot of money, you can win a parliamentary seat. After the two revolutions, there have been roles of people in society that are not accompanied with money nor political power, but they are civil roles. And therefore, I think the people who have worked in that field could be very good candidates for the next House of Representatives. Among them, of course, women. Now, what do we want in representation? Do we want the old guards? Do we want the youth? Do we want in the middle those who have participated in the two revolutions? I think we need a mix of all. Because also with the old guards, you have some of them, like Mr. Amr Moussa, who has been the head of the drafting committee of the Constitution. He has a lot of experience. So a man like that who enters the House of Representatives is a man worthy of being a member, because he will bring a lot to the House of Representatives. There are other names who people don't like, for example. I hope they don't win, but anyway, it all remains to be seen.
In Geneva, Hedayat had spent a long time working for the UN. Ms. Hedayat has participated in launching the campaign of journalists in Belém worldwide. She told us more details.
During my stay in Geneva, I stayed in Geneva for 15 years, from 1997 to 2011. And in 2003, the war in Iraq started. And the number of media casualties in that war was unprecedented. And this really annoyed me a lot as a journalist. I was living in peace and happiness and security, and everything was nice around me, but I was very moved with the media casualties. So I was at that time the president of the Association of UN Correspondents. So I started to write letters to the Americans in Iraq to tell them we are opposed to what you're doing to journalists and so on. Then came an idea to me, which was to create a committee to discuss ways and means by which we can enforce the protection of journalists. And I asked a Swiss colleague of mine, Blaise Lampin, to chair this committee, because he has a legal background, and also he was very favorable to the idea of protection of journalists in conflict zones. That was in 2003, and we started the movement towards creating an NGO, and we were successful in 2004, and we decided to call it the Press Emblem Campaign, PEC, and on the 4th of June 2004 it was established. It was established by journalists at the United Nations, and they chose myself as president and Blaise Lampin as secretary general. Then we were joined by the UAE Syndicate of Journalists, the Iraqi Syndicate of Journalists, the Palestinian Syndicate of Journalists from the Arab world, the Somali Syndicate of Journalists, and suddenly we had an assembly of 35 media organizations and syndicates adhering to the campaign. And our idea was to circulate a draft convention to protect journalists, or legal binding rules in conflict zones. So we started that effort. We were a little bit at the beginning difficult period, because the most famous media organizations stood against us. and did not want us to proceed with the emblem. But we said, how can you protect a journalist? If a journalist goes into a war zone without something on his shirt or something on his jacket, or yes, there is something called press, but this is not recognized internationally. It has to be recognized internationally. So we went through a process while we did something like sondage for all our media colleagues who are part of our campaign, and we showed them four how do you say it, photos of emblems, and they chose the one that we use now.